Chapter 2. Innocence Lost. Billy wheeled himself out to watch Holly and I get into her car the next morning. After I loaded my luggage and paused to say goodbye, he took my hand into his and looked deeply into my eyes. Often, most of the time, I should say, we feel like ships passing each other in the night, he said. We spend so little quality time with each other, barely getting to know each other, but I don't feel that way about you, Melanie. You've been kind and trusting enough to open your heart to me. Thank you for sharing. Sharing? Sharing what? I asked with a smile. My problems? Your problems are part of who you really are, but you didn't just share your problems. I got to see your excitement. I was able to feel your energy, and it strengthened me. I looked at him with astonishment. How could I strengthen anyone at the moment? Me, trembling on the sidewalk, terrified of the journey ahead of me? He leaned forward and removed the gold chain and unique locket he wore around his neck. Then he handed it to me. I'd like you to have this, he said. This is a lapis lazuli. It helps release tension and anxiety, but more important, it'll help your ability to communicate with your higher self. It helped me a great deal. Then I shouldn't take it, I said. No, it's all right. I want you to have it. Please, he insisted. I saw that he wouldn't be satisfied until I accepted his gift, so I took it and put it on. He smiled. Thanks, Billy. I leaned down to kiss him on the cheek, which automatically turned crimson. Then I hurried to the car. Mind the galaxy while I'm away, Holly called back to him. He laughed and waved as we drove away. I looked back and waved again until we rounded the corner and he disappeared from sight. It's funny, I haven't been here 2 full days, but I feel like I've known Billy for years and years, I said. Holly nodded. That's the effect Billy has on everyone. I'm glad you had the chance to spend more time with him before you left for California, she added. California, just the way she said it, and the way I thought about it made it seem like another planet. I sat with my knees together, my hands nervously twisting on my lap as we went towards the city airport. Think of something pleasant, something calming, I told myself. On the way to the airport, Holly described her sister in more detail, but admitted they hadn't seen each other for nearly a year. I won't go out there, and even if she comes here, I feel like I'm embarrassing her. She's 7 years older, so she's nearly a generation between us. But deep down, she's really very kind-hearted. It's very nice of her to do all this for me. A complete stranger, I said, wondering just how deep was deep down. Dorothy loves being monogamous. It makes her feel even more like a queen, Holly said, laughing. I have something for you to give her. She reached into her pocketbook to produce a small jewelry box, wrapped in paper, decorated with the ram, the sign for Aries. Dorothy's sign. It's a bracelet filled with amethyst. The gems for Aries are amethyst and diamond, but she has enough diamonds, you'll see. I'll make sure that she gets it right away, I promised, tucking the tiny box away in my purse. Thanks. Well, she said, as the airline hangars came into view, we're almost there. My heart thumped like a parade drum. Airplanes, hundreds overhead. How would I ever find my way through this maze of activity? Everyone else looked like he knew where he was going and going there fast. I felt like I was floating through a dream and bumped into another direction. Now, don't worry, Holly said, seeing the expression on my face. As soon as we pull up, the sky cap will take your bags and give you your baggage receipts. Then he'll tell you which gate to go for boarding. The directions are posted clearly inside the airport, she assured me. And if you have any questions, there'll be someone from the airlines nearby. I took a deep breath. I was here. I was actually going. She pulled up to the curb and we stepped out. The sky cap took my bags and stamped the receipts and my ticket. Gate 41, he mumbled. Gate 41. I tried to get him to repeat it, but he was already helping someone else. I turned to Holly. I can't stay parked here any longer. They just give you enough time to drop someone off. You'll see a television monitor inside with your flight number and the gate number, along with the time your plane takes off. Thanks for everything, Holly. You call and I'll call you, she said. She held my hands and we stood there looking at each other. Then she shook her head. Your mother must have been some blind woman to leave a daughter like you behind, she said. She hugged me and I held on to her. I held her as if she was my buoy, keeping me afloat in this ocean of people and noise and activity. She turned and got back in her car, flashing a final smile my way. I watched her drive off, waving and looking at her until she was gone. Now I was really all alone, without a friend in the world. 2 elderly people brushed past me roughly, neither realizing they almost knocked me over with their suitcases. I was standing in the wrong place. I clutched my purse and headed inside before someone else trampled me. It wasn't much different inside. People were rushing by, pulling luggage on wheels, calling to each other. At the desk, a man was arguing vehemently with the attendant, while people behind him all wore looks of annoyance and frustration. How they could all use Billy Maxwell's calming words in meditation, I thought, shaking my head. What's so funny? A young man in a dark gray suit asked. He had curly blonde hair and an impish look in his hazel eyes with a dimple on his right cheek. He carried a black briefcase and an umbrella. What? Oh, I was just watching those people, seeing steam coming out of their ears. Steam? He turned and looked at the line. Oh, he smiled pleasantly. You're a seasoned traveler, huh? Who, me? No, sir, this is my first trip on an airplane ever, I exclaimed. Really? Well, you don't look it. Where are you going? Wouldn't it be Los Angeles by any chance? Would it? Yes, I replied. I've got to go to gate 41. That's easy. I'm headed that way too, he nodded to his left. He took a few steps and paused when I didn't follow. I don't bite, he quipped. I didn't think you did, I said nervously and started after him. I'm Jerome Folsworth, he said. Unfortunately, I have to travel a lot, so I am a seasoned traveler. He grimaced. Hotel rooms, taxis, and airports, that's my life. What a life, he concluded with a smirk. Why do you travel so much? Like everyone else, he walked up at a quick pace. I nearly had to jog to keep up. I'm in banking and I have to go from Boston to New York or Chicago to Denver often. Sometimes I go to Atlanta, sometimes I go to Los Angeles. Today it's Los Angeles. Ever hear that movie, If It's Tuesday, There Must Be Belgium? I shook my head. Well, anyway, that's me. Busy, busy, busy. Sometimes I feel like a bee, he muttered, swinging his briefcase as he walked. He stopped suddenly and turned to me. Look at me, he said. Do I look like a man in his late 20s or a man in his late 30s, early 40s? Don't lie. I don't lie, I said, especially to strangers. He laughed. I like that. He paused and tilted his head to consider. You know what makes sense? You have to know someone to care enough to lie to him. I don't lie much to strangers either. He thought and nodded. Well, you don't look like a man in his 40s, I said, but do I look like a man in his 30s, he waited, his eyes tightening. Early or mid-30s, I admitted. That's because my hair's starting to thin at the top of my forehead and it comes from stress. I'm really only 28. He started to turn and stopped. What did you say your name was? I didn't tell you my name, but it's Melanie. Melanie Logan. Melanie. Don't tell me you sing and you're on your way to Los Angeles to become a star, he said disdainfully as we continued walking. No, I'm not going there to become a star, I replied, but I didn't think he really heard me. Right up here, he said, indicating an elevator. You've got to check your purse. So if you have a gun, you better take it out now. A gun? Just kidding, he said. When we reached the entryway, I watched him put his briefcase on the table and realized they were looking at an x-ray machine. I put my purse on the moving table. Have any change or keys in your pocket? No, ma'am, I said. It's probably that necklace. Put it in the basket, she ordered. Jerome stood there watching and smiled at me. Slowly I took off the necklace Billy had given me and put it in the basket. Then I walked through, this time without the ringing sound. Okay, she said, and offered the basket to take out my necklace. I did so quickly and put it on, and then I grabbed my purse and joined Jerome. I should have told you that would happen. I always have to take off this watch. He checked it and slipped the shiny gold back on his wrist. You're going on American Flight 102 also. Yes. We have almost an hour. Want a cup of coffee or something, he said, nodding toward the cafeteria. I might have a cup of tea. Stomach's woozy, he kidded. As a matter of fact, it is, I said. I don't see why I should be ashamed of being nervous. I bet he had been nervous the first time he traveled like this, I thought. He heard the defiance tone in my voice. It's all right. The reason mine isn't woozy is because it's turned into a tin can from all the fast food I eat on the road and the plain food I eat. Come on, he said, and led me to the cafeteria. He ordered a coffee and a donut and a cup of tea for me. Thanks, I said, when he insisted paying for it. It's no big deal. I'm a bank executive in my father's bank. Money grows on trees, he said, and indicated to a table in the front of the cafeteria. We sat and he handed me my tea. Do you really hate your job as much as you claim? I asked. Hate it? No. I've gotten so I don't feel anything about it. I go through the paces and do what I have to do, then go home, he said. He didn't look when he spoke. His eyes continually wandered. Like everyone else around me, he seemed to be a bundle of wild energy. I thought he might just go poof and rise up to the ceiling like a small cloud. Where's home? Boston. I told you that, he said. You weren't listening, Melanie Logan. He waved his long right forefinger at me. See? I remembered your full name. Pay attention to everything and everyone when you travel, he advised. He bit into his donut, then offered it to me. No, thank you. You calm down once you're in the air, he assured me. Actually, flying is the best way to travel. You put on earphones, sit back, and fall asleep. Most of the time I've got to work on the plane because I'm behind on my paperwork. I hate paperwork. What exactly do you do? I work on commercial loans, he said. It's not as glamorous as what the people do in Hollywood. So why are you going there? Vacation? He continued to look around as if, after he asked me questions, as if he didn't care what I would answer or he was looking for someone else. No, I'm going to meet my mother. Oh, he turned back. Your parents divorced and you live with your father? Not exactly, I said. You don't have to tell me your private business. I'm just being nosy to pass the time. Your name's Melanie, but you don't sing, he asked. He looked to his right, chewing his donut quickly, actually gobbling it. I play the fiddle. Fiddle! He turned back to me and laughed. Not the violin. It's different. I was brought up in West Virginia where playing the fiddle was very popular. Oh. There was something unusual about your accent. Fiddle, huh? Well, I suppose that's nice. He swallowed the last morsel of a donut and licked his lips. I'm hungrier than I thought. I think I'll get another donut. Oh, let me get it this time. You bought my tea, I offered. He laughed. A woman of independent means. I like that. Sure, get me a plain. No, make it a chocolate donut this time, he said. I reached into my purse and opened my wallet and took out $2. Is this enough? Yes, he said, shaking his head. It's more than your tea costs, so it's not exactly a fair exchange, he warned. That's something a banker would say, I replied, and he laughed harder. Thanks. I went to the counter and picked out the donut. His eyes were still full of laughter when I returned. I'm not used to a woman buying things for me. The girls I know belong to the Leech Society, he said, taking the donut. Come on, share this one with me, okay? All right, I said, and took the half that he broke off. We ate in silence. I was in Los Angeles 2 months ago on a convention, he said, as he finished his half. Did you like it? Los Angeles? I stayed in the Beverly Hilton. That's the way to see Los Angeles. Chauffeurs, The best restaurants. Matter of fact, that's the way to see any place. Where does your mother live? I rattled off the address because I had committed it to memory soon after Kenneth Childs had given it to me in Providence, Joan. West Hollywood. Could be nice, he said. How come you've never been there before? She hasn't been there that long, I replied. He saw from my face that there was much more to the story, but he didn't look like he wanted to pry anymore. He nodded, then looked around again. I just remembered I got to make a phone call. Would you watch my briefcase? I'll be right back, he said, and jumped up before I could reply. He hurried down the terminal. The way he was burning up energy, he probably would look 40 or 50 soon, I thought. I sat back and watched the crowds of people moving along. Where were all these people going, I wondered. Were any of them first-time airplane travelers like me? Suddenly Jerome appeared again, looking all out of breath. I got a new crisis, he said, here in New York. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got to return to the city. He picked up his briefcase and then paused. The trouble is, I can't get these papers to Los Angeles today. Listen, could you do me a favor? I would be willing to pay you. What is it? I asked. There will be a man at the airport waiting at the gate when you arrive. He'll be holding a sign that reads, Farnsworth. Just give him this briefcase. I'll be calling and telling him to expect you, okay? Just give him the briefcase? That's it, he said, okay? Here, he added, taking a $50 bill out of his wallet. Oh, you don't have to give me any money for something so simple, I said. I insist. I won't do it if you insist on giving me money. If we can't do little favors for each other. He smiled. You know, I had a feeling it was my lucky day when I saw you standing there smiling like that. Thanks. And if we ever run into each other, I'll be sure to buy you another cup of tea. He pushed the briefcase toward me. A man standing with a sign, Farnsworth. He won't be that hard to find, he declared, and then he walked off, disappearing into the crowds of people who had come off the airplanes. I finished my tea and got up. The briefcase was a little heavier than I had anticipated, but it wasn't too heavy. I walked down the terminal until I reached gate 41. There were many people there already. I asked the attendant what I had to do next. You'll get your boarding pass at the desk, she instructed, and I got into line. 10 minutes later, I reached the desk and handed the attendant my ticket. She gave me my boarding pass and I sat and waited till everybody announced our plane would be moving. My heart began to beat madly again. When I heard my seat number, I joined the line and made my way to the airplane. The attendant at the door smiled warmly at me and directed me to the right. You have an aisle seat, she said. I found it quickly. There was an elderly man in a brown suit sitting at the window already, his eyes closed. He opened them when I sat next to him. Hello there, he said. Hi. I put my briefcase under the seat in front of me and buckled my seatbelt, just as we had been instructed. Then I smiled at him again. Going home? No, I'm going to Los Angeles for the first time, I said. How about you? Going home. I visited my brother in Brooklyn. He's too old to travel anymore, so I come to him. Used to be we took turns. It's not so easy when you get old, but you know what they say, it beats the alternative, he added and laughed, his thick lensed glasses bouncing on the bridge of his nose. How old's your brother? 94, 2 years older than me, he replied. You're 92, I asked, astonished. Years young. If you think of yourself as being old, you're old, he said plainly. He did have a remarkable young-looking light gray eyes and more hair than I thought a man of that age would have, and a face that, although crossed with deep wrinkles on his forehead and temples, was not that withered. He was slim, but certainly didn't look fragile and weak. I'll have to ask you to tell me your secret, I said, smiling. You mean the secret to keep bouncing? He leaned toward me. Do what you have to do, but let someone else do the worrying, he replied and then laughed again. It's all up here, he pointed to his temple. Mind over matter. So are you in college? Not yet, I said, and told him a little about myself. He had a hearing aid, which I thought had to work very well. He seemed to hear everything I said. I didn't realize how long I'd been talking until the pilot announced that we were the next plane to be approved for takeoff. I sat back holding my breath. Is this your first time on an airplane? Yes, sir, I said. Remember what I told you. Let someone else do the worrying. He closed his eyes and sat back, looking very relaxed. I was lucky to be sitting next to him because he had a calming effect on me. How could I be nervous when a man in his 90s was so brave? Once we were airborne, he told me about his life. He could remember the Spanish-American War as well as the First and Second World Wars, of course. It was mind-boggling thinking about all the changes he'd seen. He and his brother had worked with their father in the garment industry, and they were only 12 years old. He had many different jobs in his life and finally became an insurance salesman and married and moved to California, where he said he made some money in real estate. His wife died nearly 14 years ago. I heard about his children and his grandchildren. He talked so much I didn't realize how much time had passed. We had our lunch and then he took a nap and I read a magazine. I fell asleep for a while myself and then woke up and heard the pilot say, "We're close to Los Angeles." Remember, my elderly friend said, his hand over mine, "Stress and worry, that's what puts age on you." Now, time. Time's just a reminder that we ain't here forever. Thank you, I said. After that, it all happened so fast. The plane landing, getting my things together, saying goodbye to my new friend, and leaving the airplane. My heart was thumping so hard and quickly, I was afraid I'd faint before I set eyes on Holly's sister. I didn't have to look long. She was right there at the gate doorway, unmistaken, an elegant beauty with a wide-brim white hat, a lace coat over her milk-white silk dress. She wore matching silk gloves and a large diamond earrings. Her hair was a sleek cap of pale shining gold, pulled back from her face to show her sculptured profile and unlined face. Holly had warned me that her sister Dorothy was supporting a number of plastic surgeons in Beverly Hills. Holly called it Dorothy's wrinkle panic. The mere sight of a line would send her into a frenzy and put her on the phone with her cosmetic surgeon. Her nose had been trimmed, her eyelids and skin tightened so often her face resembled a mask. But she did have Holly's youthful hazel eyes. Her lips were fuller. Later I would learn too that it was because some of the plastic surgery she had done. Beside her stood a uniformed chauffeur, handing some young man with turquoise eyes and hair, the color of fresh straw, trimmed close to the sides and sweeping wave over the top. He had a cleft chin and a sharp-looking jawbone with high cheekbones. At that moment, his firm mouth was curled up slightly in the right corner, a laugh in his eyes as he contemplated me, wide-eyed and terrified, walking into the terminal. Dorothy was a tall woman, at least 4 or 5 inches taller than Holly. Her chauffeur was easily 6'3", I thought. He was a trim movie star sleek with that perfect Hollywood tan I saw on the faces of stars in magazines. The caramel tint emphasized his aqua eyes. Dorothy waved. Beside them stood 2 uniformed policemen studying everyone who came off the plane. I waved back and hurried along. "Melanie?" "Yes," I said. "I just knew it was you, didn't I, Spike?" she said as I approached. "You had a good description," he said, widening his handsome smile. "Oh, dear me, look at you. You're so sweet," she said. "Isn't she just the freshest little thing you've ever seen, Spike?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, gawking at me, a silent laugh on his lips. "Welcome to Los Angeles," Dorothy declared. "My sister has told me all about you, but of course, I want to get to know you for myself. I'm sure half of the things she told you are either exaggerations or figments of that wild imagination of hers. Spike, take her briefcase." "Briefcase?" She asked herself, raising her eyebrows as soon as she said it. "Why would you be carrying something so ugly? Couldn't my sister provide you with a suitable bag, something more feminine?" "It's not mine. I'm doing someone a favor," I said, and gazed past them, looking for the man with the sign. "Favor?" Dorothy looked at Spike. He shrugged. "I met someone at the airport in New York, a banker. He was on his way and had an emergency. He asked me to take this to Los Angeles and give it to a man who held up a sign with his name, Farnsworth." I said, still looking past them, but I don't see him. What nerve, Dorothy said, especially to burden a young girl coming here for the first time. She looked at Spike again, whose smile had evaporated and been replaced with a frown, and it put furrows in his forehead. His eyes went to the policeman, and he reached quickly for the briefcase, practically pulling it out of my hands. I thought he was being rather rude, and I was about to protest. After all, it was my responsibility. He stepped away quickly. Did you have a nice flight, dear? Sometimes it was bumpy. I don't fly unless I fly first class anymore. Not that it's less bumpy, but at least you'll be a little bit more comfortable. So you must tell me all about yourself and your adventure. Tell me all about my sister. I hope you don't believe half the things she claims to be able to do. We'll have lunch before I could utter a syllable. After Spike gets your luggage. She took a deep breath. Spike remained a few steps in front of us. I really want to get that briefcase to the man, I said. I promised. And I feel responsible. Of course, dear. Spike? He turned as we reached the long corridor. The gentleman's she's looking for must be down at the baggage carousel, don't you think? Dorothy said. He paused and looked past us, then started to open the briefcase, but it was locked. I don't think you should do that, I protested. I'll be right back, he told Dorothy and headed to the men's room. Why doesn't he let me take care of the briefcase, I asked. I swear I have no idea, she said. He's an actor, of course, and like all of them, he's moody and unpredictable. Everyone in LA these days is either trying to get into the entertainment industry or selling real estate. Enough about Spike. Please tell me about you. Where did you meet my sister? I told her about Providencetown and Kenneth, Holly's arrival at the beach, and how we became friends. She still drives that ridiculous circus car? Yes, I said, laughing and thinking about the bright psychedelic colors. She had her ear pierced when she was only 8, you know. She had a friend do it, and she had to be taken to the doctor before the infection set in. My father was furious. Before Dorothy could continue, Spike reappeared, but without the briefcase. Where's Mr. Farnsworth's briefcase? I demanded. In the garbage bin. Let's get moving, he said to Dorothy. What? Why did he do that? I cried. Quiet, he said gruffly. Now just a minute, I began, determined to make him explain. He surprised me by seizing my arm at the elbow and pulling me forward. Before I could protest, he turned to Dorothy. Drugs, he said. Oh dear. What? That briefcase was lined with something called cocaine. Ever hear of it? He said sarcastically. That's probably why the police were waiting at the gate. They got a tip-off. He found out the plane and the case was with her. He told Dorothy and looked at me. If they would have stopped you, you would have been in great trouble. Maybe we all would have been, he added. But I looked at Dorothy, whose eyes were almost as wide as mine. He was a nice young man, a banker. Surely this is a mistake, I cried. Spike shook his head. He must have spotted her a mile away, he told Dorothy. I pulled my arm out of his grip and swallowed over the huge aching lump in my throat. That's not true. He had an emergency. How would I know that he would do such a thing anyway, I asked. If you refused, he would have looked for someone else or given up for today. You just transported a lot of cocaine across the country, and you might have even brought it to Mrs. Livingston's home, he added firmly. I felt myself wilt, the tears burning as I looked at Dorothy. She wagged her head at Spike, flashing him a cool, chastising look. Oh, don't be so harsh on her, Spike. She didn't know. She patted me on the shoulder. It's nothing, dear. These things happen today in this mad world. But we won't worry about it now. Let's just get our luggage and go, Spike. I'm absolutely famished. We'll go directly to the Vine on Beverly Drive. Wait until you taste their baked goat cheese salad, Melanie, and grilled eggplant sandwich. Thinking about the trouble I might have gotten myself into made my throat close. I took a deep breath of relief and shot a glance at Spike, feeling ashamed that I had gotten so angry at him when he was just doing what he thought he had to do to protect us all. He was silent as we continued down the terminal to the baggage area, where I spotted a man in a light blue jacket and dungarees holding a small sign with the word Farnsworth written on it. "Don't look at him," Spike ordered. We hurried by him to the baggage carousel. However, I couldn't help but glance back at him once in a while. As the crowd thinned, he turned rapidly and left the terminal. "I'm sorry," I told Dorothy. "I had no idea what that man had given me." "It's all right, dear. Please, I hate unpleasant things. When something nasty happens, I just buy myself something new to wear and make myself feel good again." Her eyes drank me in from head to toe. "That's what we'll do for you later. Buy something nice to wear. I'm sure that you don't have the right thing. I'm sure you don't have the right things. You need something more fashionable if you're going to trapeze around Beverly Hills." "Oh, I can't ask you to do anything like that." "Of course you can't, but I can still do it," she said with a laugh. I spotted one of my bags and Spike scooped it up. "I almost forgot," I said, digging into my purse. "Holly sent you this." I handed her the small package wrapped with the sign of the Aries. Dorothy rolled her eyes. "Oh no, what magic charm did she deliver this time?" Without opening it, she dropped it into her own purse. I thought how much Holly would be disappointed, but before I could say anything, my second bag appeared and I pointed it out to Spike. We showed my receipts to the attendant at the door and Spike carried my bags to the limousine. It was a long, sleek black Mercedes with plush leather seats. A bar and a small television sat in the rear. Spike opened the door for us and we got in. The leather smelled brand new. "I'm sorry about what happened in there," I said again. The more I thought about it, the more ashamed I felt for endangering people who were being so kind to me. "I don't hear you," Dorothy saying. "I don't hear unpleasant things. I've trained myself to be deaf when I have to be. So you might as well stop talking about it. Let's talk about you again. Tell me about this place, this coal mining town, and how you came to live in Providencetown," she said. "I'm actually fond of the Cape, but we only stay in Hyannis. That's where the Kennedys live, you know." "Spike, please, take the fastest route." "The Vine," she told him, and he got behind the wheel. "I'm absolutely starving to death back here." "Yes, ma'am," he said and winked at me as we pulled out of the parking lot onto the road. With all that happened, I hadn't even looked up to the magnificent blue sky. We shot into traffic, and we were soon on California's famous freeways. I was really here, somewhere not far away from my mother. If I ever needed her, I thought I needed her now.